Now, India has reacted sharply to the pro-Khalistan rally that is being organized in London on the 12th of August. The spokesperson of India's Ministry of External Affairs has called it a separatist event and expressed hope that the British government would act appropriately. He said India had made its objections clear to the British government both in writing and otherwise. The controversial pro-Khalistan rally in London is being organized by Sikhs for Justice. Their goal is to hold a non-binding referendum in 2020. Joined by my colleague Siddharth Simbal, our correspondent from New Delhi. Siddharth, tell me that the protest has been launched, but ultimately the rally or the get-together where the people who are using this day as a referendum day would be allowed to congregate there.
Well, they will be allowed to congregate and take part in that rally, pro-Khalistan rally on 12th of August. And for any country, their territorial integrity is the most important thing, and nobody likes a secessionist activity. And today, by telling the world and of course UK in particular that it's an activity that of course impinges on India's territorial integrity, India has sent a strong signal to London. Question is, will London listen and won't allow its cities to be used by such pro-Khalistan activities or rallies? That's the question. And one of the questions was asked that whether relationship between UK and India is going towards a downward trend, because it's not only this issue that's creating a mess for the relationship, but there's also issues like Nirav Modi, like Vijay Mallya, extradition of these people. So all in all, it doesn't look a very nice picture when it comes to relationship between UK and India, but this rally has been a particular sore point given the fact that India has sent number of demarches to the UK Foreign Office, and the Indian High Commissioner also met the MOS there in the Foreign Office, but still the UK is allowing these pro-Khalistan elements to go ahead with the rally in London that's going to take place on 12th. WION also spoke to the British High Commission here and the Foreign Office. Both reacted saying that it's their right to go for these rallies, and said that unless they don't indulge in any violence, it's okay for them.
Is it correct that there's a proposal to organize a sort of a counter rally? Is it correct that there will be a counter rally there?
Well, it's usually the case whenever these kind of rallies takes place, there is a counter rally that is likely to happen, and we have been told that a counter rally will be organized, but date and time still not being confirmed. But largely right now the focus is on this pro-Khalistan rally, which is getting backing even by some British parties such as the Green Party there in the UK. So that is something that raises eyebrows here in New Delhi, and by making it public here today in response to a question, now it's full-fledged open between UK and New Delhi, that New Delhi is not liking it, and Delhi made sure by saying this point that UK should take care given the long-term relationship both the countries have.
Okay. Retaliating for the killing of its two members, Hamas militants, Gaza fired multiple rockets into Israel on Wednesday night. Israeli army responded with a massive airstrike across the besieged Gaza Strip. According to Israeli army, the violence began after Palestinian armed groups fired at an Israeli engineering vehicle, and Israeli troops responded with tank fire. On Tuesday, Hamas had vowed to retaliate for the killing of its two operatives in an Israeli tank fire. 3 Palestinians, including a pregnant woman and an 18-month-old baby, were killed in the Israeli attack, while 9 Israeli also got hurt in Hamas rocket fire. The latest flare-up comes despite talks from both sides of the progress towards a possible truce to avert a fourth war in a decade. A senior member of the Hamas that controls Gaza said talks mediated by the United Nations and Egypt calm tensions were in advanced stages. Along with Egypt, Israel maintains a land, sea and air blockade in Gaza that has brought the coastal territory's economy to a state of collapse. Around 2 million people live in Gaza, many stateless descendants of Palestinians who fled or were driven out of what is now Israel at its founding in 1948. The tensions between Israel and Gaza are at an all-time high after following weekly protests by Palestinians along Israel-Gaza border, and at least 150 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli gunfire since the protests began on March 30th. Israel has been beset by a new wave of flaming balloons and kite attacks from Palestinian protesters. Tensions are escalating at a time when the US has already squeezed funds for Palestinian refugees. The US is asking the Palestinians to fall in line or suffer. The United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestine refugees is depending on support from countries such as India to continue its work in the region. Daniel Pagani has more.
These are words from a leaked mail written by Jared Kushner, son-in-law and senior advisor of President Donald Trump, currently in charge of the so-called Deal of the Century, a plan aimed at finding a solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. The battle against UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestine refugees, is one among the many the Trump administration is fighting within the United Nations. A battle Donald Trump himself initiated on Twitter, of course. The US administration had been UNRWA's largest donor for years, but Washington has decided to slash its funds from $365 million to $65 million. Washington has accused UNRWA of letting its funds slip into Hamas' hands in the Gaza Strip, an accusation promptly denied.
Get money to serve the Palestine refugees. We do not get money to serve Hamas. So I have had absolutely no reports, no evidence that any of the resources we have get diverted to Hamas. We use them to run our services for 1.3 million refugees.
Money is a negotiating tool, a constant in President Trump's foreign policy. He has said that if Palestinians want the money back, they must agree to renew peace talks with Israel. And UNRWA is left facing the worst financial crisis since its establishment in 1948. UNRWA provides aid to 4.5 million Palestinian refugees scattered in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, the West Bank and Gaza. It provides schooling and grants access to health care. It's a major employer in all Palestinian territories, helping families secure loans for their houses.
We now have a situation where education, the school system of UNRWA, is facing an existential threat. It may be that we don't have enough money to open our schools for 535,000 children, not just in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, but also in Syria, Lebanon and Jordan.
The UN launched an emergency call, requesting other countries to increase their donations. Among the many, India answered positively and increased its share from 1.25 to $5 million.
We're extremely grateful to the government and the people of India for supporting UNRWA's work so generously, and also to supporting the Palestine refugees we serve, 5.3 million of the most disadvantaged people on our planet.
Emerging powers could fill the vacuum left by the United States. But as of now, UNRWA is running on empty coffers. The situation could be particularly hard for Gaza, where half the population lives below the poverty line.
The social consequences of these cuts in Gaza are frankly catastrophic. In many instances, an UNRWA food parcel is the difference between your family being above the poverty line and below the poverty line, being food insecure or not being food insecure. UNRWA's salary, a salary at UNRWA for an UNRWA worker in Gaza is often the difference between poverty or not poverty. And don't forget that many of the bank loans in Gaza are guaranteed by an UNRWA salary. So there's an extreme risk that the banking system itself would be deeply affected. So it could be catastrophic, frankly. And in a situation where people have been living under blockade for more than 11 years, where there's 95% of the water is undrinkable, where there's an electricity crisis, where there's a public health crisis, where there's a crisis in almost every aspect of human life, people are extremely fragile. And when you start to tinker around with service provision, when you start to cut services, indeed, the impact will be unpredictable, it will be dramatic.
The world is still waiting to understand precisely what the so-called deal of the century will be and how Jared Kushner intends, using his word, to solve once and for all the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As of now, witnessing an enormous cut to the United Nations agency taking care of more than 5 million Palestinian refugees does not seem to help the conflict to come to an end.
Let me go across to my colleague Daniele Pagani, live from West Asia. Daniele, tell me, this escalation of violence has actually spiked. Why has that happened in the past 72 hours?
It's not really happened in the past 72 hours. This is an escalation that started precisely, I would say, on the 20th of July, the first Friday when an Israeli soldier was killed during the demonstration for the Great March of Return. Ever since, the situation started plummeting. Yesterday, what brought to the current crisis, yesterday Hamas was accused by Israel of targeting an engineering vehicle who was working on the behalf of the Israeli government. That started the retaliation. Reports say that nearly 150 missiles, rockets started from Gaza against Israel, and Israel responded, hitting 140 military premises belonging allegedly to Hamas. This is something that has been increasing not only from the 20th of July, but from the very beginning of the Great March of Return. Remember that every Friday, Palestinians in Gaza still go to the fence, still clash with the Israeli army in order to request the right to return to their original lands. A right that Israel is the only country in the world denying to the refugees, despite not being a formal conflict anymore.
In South India, while parts of Karnataka are staring at a possibility of drought, neighbouring Kerala is witnessing a deluge. Unrelenting rains have caused landslides and flooding across Kerala. At least 20 people have been killed in rain-related incidents. Several people have been reportedly gone missing. The National Disaster Response Force team has been moved to the affected districts. Educational institutions have declared holidays in various parts of the state. The Kochi airport had to suspend operation at the international and domestic terminals for 2 hours following fear of flooding. That's the rain which lashed the airport. Red alert has been issued by the state government as many rivers and other water bodies are overflowing. The gates, and the most important, the gates of the Idukki Dam on the Periyar River have been opened after a gap of 26 years. All dams are full and the gates have been opened so that the dams don't break, and all the reservoirs, almost all the reservoirs in Kerala are full to their capacity. A third red alert was issued an hour back in the state. The Portugal's huge wildfire that has started into a Monchique last Friday has now spread across the neighbouring Silves municipality. More than 1,400 firefighters are endlessly trying to bring the fire under control, which has spread across 42,000 acres. Around 30 people have been injured so far. More than a dozen aircraft and 5 fighting planes have been deployed to tackle it as the wildfire is moving towards popular beach resorts and tourist spots. Residents of Portugal's southern town of Silves have been evacuated as wildfire spread across nearby hillside. People carried children and dogs in their arms as military police guided them away from the thick smoke and flames. Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has warned people that the massive fire burning in the southern Algarve tourist region would take many days to extinguish, as authorities sent more firefighters to combat the blaze. A man has been arrested in connection with the holy fire in Southern California, which has burned more than 6,200 acres in the Cleveland National Forest. 51-year-old Forrest Gordon Clark has been arrested on the suspicion of arson and felony threat and has been held in a jail with a bail set at $1 billion. Clark allegedly sent an email last week warning the place will burn and got arrested on suspicion of arson in connection with the fire that began in the canyon. Clark is scheduled to be arraigned in the court today and is expected to be charged with aggravated arson, criminal threat and resisting an executive officer, and could be sentenced to life in prison if convicted. Mandatory evacuations went into effect as the so-called holy fire in Southern California ripped across 6,200 acres, edging closer towards densely populated areas of Orange County. Some 600 firefighters are focusing their efforts on preventing the lip of the fire from spreading down the hill slopes that reach the communities bordering the federal land. The blaze, which started in the Cleveland National Forest Monday, is one of the 17 major fires burning in the state.